She drew water from the stone well before sunrise, the chill biting her fingers. Tomas rolled the bicycle wheel on the porch, humming softly. "Elena, do you think soldiers ever reach places like ours?" he asked. She looked up, hiding tension behind a faint smile. "Maps forget some villages, Tomas. That doesn't mean danger forgets us." He shrugged, but his hands trembled. "Do you think Father knew?" Her gaze shifted to the faded photograph on the table, the image of a man who had smiled too seldom. She traced the frame's edge lightly. "He did what he could," she said quietly. Marta emerged from the kitchen, wringing a rag. "Breakfast before chores," she called. Her voice was soft, but there was steel beneath it. "If they come, do not argue. Survive first." Elena nodded silently, carrying bread loaves toward the neighbor's house. The smell of wet earth and dew clung to her clothes. Tomas followed, adjusting the chain on his brother's old bicycle. "Do you think the war will reach the village?" he asked again. Elena did not answer immediately. She lifted a loaf, balancing it in both hands. "Some things reach farther than anyone expects," she said finally. At the edge of the fields, old Mr. Pavel crouched over his horse cart. "Morning," he muttered. His eyes lingered on the horizon, wary. "Morning," she said. He nodded toward the forest. "Shells last week," he said. "You heard?" "Yes," Elena replied, though she had only heard distant echoes. Her pulse quickened. Inside, Marta hummed while mending clothes, the rhythmic motion steadying her. "We do not speak of it too much," she said. "Fear grows if it is fed." Elena placed a loaf on the neighbor's table. "Your garden looks well," she said, forcing lightness into her voice. The neighbor smiled briefly, then lowered her gaze. Returning home, she caught Tomas staring at the sky. "Do clouds bring soldiers?" he asked. "No," Elena said. "Clouds only hide the sun." He frowned. "But the sun can vanish too, can't it?" "Yes," she admitted softly. "And so can people." Inside, the house smelled of wood smoke and damp linen. Elena set the last loaf down beside the oil lamp. The photograph of her father reflected its small, flickering light. She brushed her fingers over it. "Marta," she whispered, "do you think they will come?" Her mother's hands froze on the needle. "They may. That is why we endure quietly." Tomas shuffled toward the table, peering at the photograph. "Will Father be angry if we hide?" Elena smiled faintly, though her chest tightened. "He would tell us to survive. That is all." The wind rattled the shutters, carrying the faintest echo of distant artillery. Elena felt the pulse of fear brush her skin before any soldier's shadow appeared. Tomas' chair scraped the floor. "I hope we are never forgotten." "You are remembered by those who matter," Elena said. She reached for the bread knife, slicing silently, her mind tracing the forest line where danger might emerge. Marta stacked laundry, glancing at the horizon. "Keep your voices soft. The walls have ears." Elena nodded, returning to the photograph. Her fingers lingered on her father's face. She imagined him standing there, steady, before the world changed. The sky lightened slightly, muted orange over the hills. Birds stirred but made no sound. Elena's heart beat unevenly. Tomas whispered again. "Do you think he knew what would happen?" "He could not know," she said. "But he tried anyway." Her mother glanced at the clock. "Finish chores before light strengthens. Keep ready for anything." Elena moved toward the kitchen, careful with each step. Tomas followed, balancing his small hands on the wooden railing. She paused at the window, watching the horizon blur into gray. The wind carried cold over the rooftops. "I will survive," she said softly to herself, tracing the photograph one last time before carrying the water pail inside. Marta nodded, her lips pressed tight. "We all must," she whispered. And before the village knew it, fear had already entered the room, sitting quietly beside them, heavier than any soldier yet to arrive. Engines roared before sunrise, shaking the village air. Dust rose from the dirt roads as trucks ground to a halt in the square. "Outside," shouted a soldier, rifle resting against his shoulder. Elena's fingers gripped Marta's sleeve. Tomas trembled near the fence. The truck doors slammed. Boots hit the ground with authority. Captain Victor Reinhardt stepped down, polished and sharp, eyes cold as steel. Names, he said. Food stores. Spare rooms. Now. Villagers lowered heads. Mr. Pavel spat under his breath. This cart. A rifle but cracked against his shoulder. Silence followed. Elena's mouth opened once. Stay back, Tomas. He froze. Victor's eyes shifted to her. Calm, clear voice. Not fear. He noted it. Soldiers moved through the village like shadows. Drawers toppled, letters scattered. Paper fluttered like dead leaves. One young soldier, Daniel Weiss, knelt beside a photograph on a table. He set it straight after another kicked it aside. Elena's heart paused. She noticed his care. Victor noticed too. Search the house thoroughly, one officer barked. Nothing hidden. Elena's mother whispered, do not speak. Tomas watched soldiers overturn their furniture. They'll take everything, he muttered. They take only what they find, Elena said softly, keeping her hands folded. Outside, the village square smelled of wet dust and horses. Mr. Pavel grunted as soldiers led his cart away. Elena followed Marta to the center. Victor's polished boots stopped before them. You, he said, pointing. Mother and child? Yes, sir, Marta answered. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled. Victor's gaze lingered on Elena. You speak calmly. Most children tremble. Fear does not always show itself, she said. A brief tilt of his mouth suggested amusement or irritation. Hard to tell. A soldier kicked a chair. Tomas flinched. Elena caught his sleeve. Keep your head down, she whispered. Victor motioned another officer. Assign rooms for command. Secure food stores. Make a list of every head in this village. Elena's eyes swept the square. Families huddled together. Hands clenched. Eyes where Daniel delivered a small tray to a house near the edge. Elena caught his glance. He nodded once, almost imperceptibly. Inside the homes, cupboards opened and slammed. Elena observed silently as papers and bread were seized. Quietly, she murmured to herself. She watched Daniel, saw the conflict in his hands, the hesitation before he obeyed a brutal order. Victor stepped into another room. Maps and letters lay exposed on tables. His eyes paused on her father's photograph. Elena met his gaze without flinching. You understand what is expected here? He asked. Yes, sir, she replied. He studied her a moment longer. Then he turned away, giving instructions to his officers. Outside, the trucks idled, engines humming like restless beasts. Boots crunched over dirt. Villagers shifted, whispered, tried to disappear into themselves. Elena noticed which soldiers worked mechanically and which moved carefully. One young man adjusted a crate so it would not damage a small chair. Another tore through drawers without thought. She made a mental note. Details like this would matter later. Marta reached for Elena's hand. Do not look too long, she whispered. They read fear. I am watching, Elena said softly, but not for them. A crate tumbled in the square. Tomas gasped. Elena placed a hand over his mouth. Quiet. Daniel returned to the rear, brushing dirt off his sleeve, never looking directly at Victor. He carried a small loaf of bread and placed it near a family table, careful. Victor's boots echoed across the square. He stopped again before Elena. Your voice, he said quietly. Do not lose it. It is unusual. She inclined her head. I will speak only when necessary. He studied her expression unreadable. Then he walked on, leaving command officers to finish the inventory. Elena exhaled slowly, but her eyes never left Daniel. The young soldier looked back once and ducked his head. Small gestures, quiet choices. She catalogued them all. Tomas tugged her sleeve. Will they leave soon? They leave when they take what they want, Elena said. We cannot hurry them. The sun rose higher, dust hanging in pale shafts of light. Soldiers continued their work. The village remained still, trapped under their shadow. Elena returned to her mother's side. Every footstep, every glance, every quiet act of care or cruelty would stay with her. She knew already that the day would not end quietly. And she also knew that observing, remembering, and speaking only when necessary might be the only weapon she had. Evening settled over the village, gray light filtering through clouds. Soldiers moved inside homes, rifles ready. Victor selected Elena's house for command quarters. "No," Marta said softly. "This is our home." Victor's boots tapped the floor. Objection noted. Ignored. Elena's hands clenched. She watched soldiers spread maps across the dining table. The old wood groaned beneath their weight. "You serve tea," Victor commanded. "Yes, sir," she said, bowing slightly. Her fingers shook as she lifted the tray. "Calm," Victor said, watching her place cups. "You speak calmly. Most people shake." "Fear does not always show itself," she answered. He studied her face, lips pressing into something close to a smile. Not kindness. Interest. Daniel remained near the door, glancing at Tomas, who watched the officers with wide eyes. Victor pointed toward the yard. "Outside," he said. "No." Marta grabbed Tomas's sleeve. "Do not." The rifle behind Victor's hand ended the protest. Tomas's small body trembled. Elena's heart tightened, but her voice stayed still. "Go," she whispered, barely audible. He obeyed. Daniel looked away, jaw tight. Elena caught his glance once, saw fear and restraint mix in his eyes. Maps covered the table, pins marking distant villages, roads, and forests. Soldiers discussed supplies. "You hear them?" Elena asked Marta quietly. "They speak of prisoners," Marta replied, voice low. "Near the forest camp. Names, orders. Everything." Elena's gaze drifted toward Victor's desk. A key ring rested beside his gloves. She noted its position, shape, weight. "Calculating." "Tea," Victor said again. He took a cup, swirling the liquid. "You notice details." "Yes, sir," Elena answered. "That is necessary." He paused, studying her fingers brushing the tray. "Most children would spill it." "Most adults too," she said softly. Victor's eyes lingered. The sound of Tomas shuffling on the porch reached them. Daniel shifted, uneasy, avoiding Elena's gaze. "Do you always obey?" Victor asked suddenly, not looking at her. "I obey when survival demands it," she replied. He tilted his head, considering. "And when courage demands?" "Then caution becomes courage," she said. A soldier dropped a set of papers. They scattered across the floor. Elena stepped lightly to avoid them, noting the pin positions on the map, the folded orders beneath Victor's gloves. "Attention to small things," Victor murmured. "It matters more than you think." She did not reply. Her pulse quickened but her face stayed calm. Tomas returned inside, pale, hands trembling. Marta pulled him close. "Do not speak of what you saw," she whispered. Elena nodded. Her mind catalogued, guard rotation, officer names, route mentions, keys, doors, small gestures that betrayed hesitation. Every detail counted. Daniel left the doorway for a moment, delivering a small tray. His glance met hers. Silent acknowledgement passed between them. She noticed it, storing it. Outside, the wind shifted, rattling shutters. Elena felt fear mix with calculation for the first time. Observation became strategy. Victor moved toward the window. "You understand?" "Yes, sir," she said softly. "I understand more than you imagine." He paused, lips tight. Then he turned toward his officers, giving orders. Maps folded into discussions, pens tapping, the quiet weight of authority filling the room. Elena placed the last teacup carefully, stepping back. Her eyes swept the room once more. Every movement, every glance, every hesitation mattered. Daniel remained at the doorway, posture rigid, silent. Tomas huddled near Marta. Victor's attention lingered on Elena one last moment before focusing elsewhere. Night fell fully over the village. Shadows pooled in corners. Elena traced the key ring with her mind, memorizing every fold of paper, every pin, every sound. Fear had entered the house earlier that day. Now, it blended with calculation. Observation became her weapon, patience her shield. She realized that survival was no longer passive. Every glance, every step, every silence held purpose. Victor's attention was dangerous, but it could be used. And for the first time, Elena understood that her role in this house was not just to endure. It was to watch, to remember, and to wait. 2 days later, the village square was still quiet, but tension thrummed beneath the air. Soldiers approached the wooden houses with precise steps. One neighbor, trembling under pressure, whispered Elena's name. "You hid bread," the man said, voice cracking. Elena's mother cried out, but Victor's hand lifted, cutting the sound. "Enough," he said. "She comes with us." "No," Marta shouted, clutching Elena's arm. "She is my daughter." Tomas ran forward, fists clenched. "Leave her." Daniel moved quickly, grasping the boy's shoulder and pulling him back. Another soldier raised a rifle, but Tomas froze, trembling. Elena's heart raced, but she walked steadily toward the waiting truck. Marta pressed her face to the wood of the doorway, tears spilling freely. The forest road stretched ahead, dark and silent. The truck's engines rumbled like distant thunder. Barbed wire fences appeared through the trees. Searchlights swung slowly, cutting arcs of cold white over muddy grounds. Inside the camp, wooden barracks loomed, windows empty like hollow eyes. Elena was placed in one alongside 3 other women. Sophia, middle-aged and tense, a schoolteacher, glanced up from her worn dress. "Letters?" she asked softly. "Yes," Elena whispered. "I was accused of hiding bread." "You?" "I carried messages," Sophia said, voice low, wary. "They found out." Irina, her husband vanished months ago, leaned against the wall, silent and watchful. Lena, barely 18, hugged her knees, shivering. "You will keep calm," Elena said softly. "They watch fear more than words." Night fell and officers spoke near the perimeter. Voices carried faintly, discussing transfers, schedules, and numbers. Elena memorized each snippet. Each whisper was a map. Later, Victor entered a separate room. The door closed with a sharp click. "Sit," he said, motioning to the chair. Elena obeyed, keeping her back straight. The wooden floor creaked beneath his boots. He placed her father's photograph on the desk. "Who sends messages through your village?" he asked, voice smooth but cold. Elena's fingers rested on her lap. She lifted her eyes only briefly. "I do not know, sir," she said carefully. He studied her, eyes lingering longer than necessary. The candlelight traced shadows across his face. Victor's interest was not only professional, it was personal. "I expected fear," he said. "Most collapse under attention." Elena lowered her gaze, softening her tone. "I do not collapse easily." He leaned back, hands clasped. "You understand more than you show," he murmured. "Yes, sir," she answered. "And I show only what is necessary." A moment passed, thick and silent. He shifted, looking past her to the candle. Victor's attention was a weapon, and Elena recognized it. Careful words could bend it without breaking. She memorized his gestures, the way his hand trembled slightly when adjusting the photograph, the shallow inhale before questions, the weight he placed on each phrase. Returning to the barracks, Elena shared her observations quietly. "Names, orders, times," she whispered to Sophia. "They speak of transfers near the forest. Tomas's name might appear soon." Sophia nodded, eyes wide. "We must be careful." Lena shivered. I don't know if I can," she said, voice trembling. "You can," Elena said softly. "We all can if we watch and wait. Fear is useful only when it is controlled." Irina tilted her head, listening. "You are different," she said. "You do not tremble." Elena only nodded. Silence became her armor. She walked along the narrow wooden floor, listening to the guards pacing above. Each footstep was a heartbeat, each voice a signal. Later, Daniel appeared briefly near the entrance, carrying a tray. He avoided Elena's eyes. She caught the hesitation in his movement and stored it for later. Small acts of care could exist even under orders, and she recognized him as an ally in silence. Outside, searchlights continued their rotation, scanning the yard like cold moons. Soldiers laughed, barked, and occasionally struck prisoners who faltered. Elena's fingers itched to move, but she waited. Observation became action, patience became strength. Night deepened. Shadows pooled beneath bunks and beams. Elena leaned against the wall, tracing the lines of light and listening to the distant murmur of officers. Each sentence, each order, each casual remark was a thread to follow. She traced her father's photograph, smoothing the edges. His eyes seemed to watch her resolve. She would survive. Not blindly, but with intelligence, with strategy. Fear was no longer a master. It was a tool. The barracks remained cold, the wooden walls hollow with the weight of captivity. Elena crouched near Lena, holding her hand until she fell asleep. Every whisper, every step, every choice now carried meaning. And in that moment, she understood Victor's weakness, fascination disguised as authority. Calm beauty, refusal to yield, measured words, these were weapons as sharp as rifles. Elena's heart beat steadily. Fear still existed, but it now walked beside calculation. The night waited. So did she. The barracks echoed with the clang of buckets and the low murmur of washing. Women scrubbed uniforms in icy water, their hands raw and red. Elena carried her pail with care, careful not to spill. Sophia leaned close. "Never trust kindness from them," she whispered, voice rough. "Even a glance can deceive. Keep your eyes open." Elena nodded, lowering her gaze. "I understand." Later, Victor called her again. The office smelled of ink, leather, and faint smoke. He poured tea, dismissing guards with a wave. "Sit," he said. She obeyed, placing her hands neatly in her lap. "You do not look defeated," he said quietly. "Should I?" she asked softly, keeping her tone even. He tilted his head, eyes narrowing, then lingered on her fingers. "Most collapse quickly. Most cry when under scrutiny. I have learned," she said, "that collapsing teaches nothing." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. Observation, patience, useful traits. For survival or deception? "Both, sir," she said calmly. Elena noted every detail of the office. The desk drawer, heavy with locked documents. The radio cabinet. A second window, facing the supply sheds. Every hinge, every lock, every shadow. Daniel delivered meals once during her questioning. He lingered in the doorway, voice barely a whisper. "Do not speak when others listen." She caught the faint bruise on his wrist, a mark of punishment. Obedience did not shield him. She stored that knowledge. That night, Lena curled in a corner, sobbing quietly. "My father," she whispered. "He is gone. They killed him in the village." Elena held her hand, fingers steady. "Shoo, listen to my voice. Breathe. You survive now." Hours passed. Coughing rattled through the barracks. The smell of wet straw and sweat filled every corner. Elena moved lightly between bunks, making certain that Lena's head stayed tucked under her arm. Sophia leaned against the wall. "We must act carefully. Strength is silent here," she murmured. Elena's eyes drifted to the candlelight flickering against the wooden beams. Fear remained, but now it was measured. Fear became tool, guide, weapon. The following morning, she remembered the guard rotation she had glimpsed near Victor's desk. Carefully, she copied it onto a scrap of paper hidden beneath her sleeve. Each line, each time, each path traced with exact memory. Daniel appeared again, placing a tray near her bunk. His glance held unspoken warning. "Do not attract attention," he whispered. "Even a word can betray you." Elena inclined her head. "I am silent," she said. The day dragged under harsh work. Water was hauled, floors scrubbed, fences checked. Every misstep could bring a blow, every glance misread. Victor's obsession with her grew. He called her repeatedly, each session drifting from strategy to personal observation. Questions that seemed idle held weight. "Do you think often?" he asked once. "I think as necessary," she replied evenly. "Necessary and courageous." "Courage is measured," she said, "by what you choose to do, not by words." His stare lingered longer than necessary. Elena kept her composure, noting every twitch of muscle, every flicker of his eye. His fascination was a weapon she could wield, but only with care. At night, she returned to the barracks quietly, placing the copied guard rotation beneath a loose floorboard. Lena slept with her hands still held. Sophia adjusted a straw mattress. Irina cleaned a pot with silent focus. Daniel's steps approached the entrance. He paused, watching. Elena met his glance briefly. In that shared silence, trust passed without a word. The cold air crept through gaps in the barracks walls. Coughing shook the room. Elena listened to each noise, calculating, cataloging, remembering. Every sound could be mapped. Every rhythm noted. When Lena stirred, Elena whispered again. "Breathe. You are safe here. For now." Sophia watched her quietly. "You hold more than fear. You hold patience, and that can save us all." Outside, searchlights cut the yard like knives. Soldiers shouted, laughed, and barked commands. Elena imagined their rotations, the paths, the doors, the patterns she had traced. And in the quiet of her mind, she began planning. Observation became preparation. Silence became strategy. Fear became weaponized. By dawn, Elena understood the balance. Protect the weak. Watch the strong. Use every small act, every glance, every hesitation to survive. And one day, to turn the odds in their favor. Victor poured tea into the thin porcelain cup, dismissing guards with a wave. "Sit," he said, voice casual. "We are alone here." Elena settled across from him, hands folded. The air smelled faintly of ink and burnt candle. "You notice details," he said. "Most overlook small things." "I notice what matters," she answered quietly. He studied her, eyes lingering. For a moment he seemed less a commanding officer and more a man carrying invisible weight. A photograph on the wall caught her attention. His younger sister, smiling, hair braided. "War teaches everyone to lose something," he said softly, voice strangely vulnerable. Elena leaned forward just slightly. "Do you still write to her?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Letters. Sometimes. Though words feel inadequate." She watched his hand tremble slightly as he adjusted the cup. That microsecond of weakness was a thread she could pull. "Letters preserve connection," she said, careful, measured. "Even here." He let out a short laugh, almost bitter. "Even here, yes." Footsteps approached outside. A sergeant called Victor's name. He rose, glancing at her. "Wait," he said. Then added quietly, "Patience is a dangerous companion." As the door clicked behind him, Elena's fingers moved quickly to the desk drawer. Inside were folded papers, neatly stacked. Prisoner transfer lists, locations, names. Her heart stuttered when she saw Tomas's. His name was there, marked for transport before dawn. She folded the page carefully into her sleeve, heart hammering but mind steady. The office smelled of polished wood and ink. She memorized the positions of each document, the keys, the radio, the second window. Observation became preparation. Every item, every fold, every hinge mattered. Victor returned, carrying a small loaf of bread. "Do not mistake my patience for mercy," he said, placing it before her. His eyes flicked to the photograph. "I understand," Elena said, bowing slightly. He nodded, lingering a moment longer than necessary. Then he left again, guards following. The office door clicked shut. Back in the barracks, the candle flickered, casting long shadows across straw mattresses and wooden walls. Sophia bent over the scrap of paper, reading in whispered tones. "This can save many," she said, voice trembling. "Not only your brother." Elena's fingers traced the fold, committing each detail to memory. "We must move carefully," she said. "Timing, placement, knowledge. One wrong step." "I know," Sophia replied. "I will help. Every step you plan, I will follow." Lena shivered in a corner. Irina watched silently, expression unreadable. Elena's presence steadled the room. Fear existed but controlled. Purpose existed alongside it. The oil lamp crackled. Elena pressed the paper beneath her sleeve, heart calm now, mind sharp. Every shadow in the barracks, every sound from outside, every guard's footstep could signal danger. She catalogued them all. Daniel appeared briefly at the entrance, carrying a tray. His gaze lingered on Elena, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them. Words were unnecessary. Trust existed in shared silence. Outside, searchlights swept the yard, arcs of cold white reflecting in puddles from the previous rain. Soldiers' voices echoed, laughter and orders blending into one. Elena imagined every path, every timing of patrols, every small motion she had witnessed. Her heart beat steadily, not from fear, but calculation. This night, this information gave her control. Not absolute control, but enough to act. Enough to protect Tomas, to help the others. Sophia moved closer. "We must be precise," she whispered. "One mistake, one careless word, and everything fails." Elena nodded. "I understand. I will watch, record, and move only when necessary. Everything depends on patience." She sat in the straw, candlelight flickering over her face, folding and refolding the hidden paper in her mind. Each route, each transfer, each name, engraved in memory. Strategy replaced helplessness. Observation became action. The barracks slept unevenly around her. A cough echoed in the corner. Lena stirred slightly but did not wake fully. Irina adjusted her blanket silently. Sophia's eyes stayed on Elena. Elena allowed herself one quiet breath. Victor's attention, dangerous as it was, had provided an opening. The smallest crack in authority became a path. Every moment now counted. The oil lamp hissed. Shadows deepened. Outside, the cold wind rattled the wooden walls. And Elena waited, patient, prepared, armed with knowledge, and determined to use it. By the time dawn crept over the forest edge, every name, every rotation, every small detail had been memorized. Fear still lived, but it walked alongside strategy. Survival was no longer passive. It was deliberate, silent, and precise. Rain fell steadily, turning the camp yard into thick mud. Water pooled in deep ruts left by boots and vehicles. Elena pressed against the barracks wall, waiting for night to deepen, her hands clutching the hidden papers beneath her coat. Footsteps echoed outside. Daniel appeared, hood pulled low, his rifle slung loosely. He paused near the latch of the barracks' side door, fingers brushing the lock. Without explanation, he left it unlatched, then disappeared into shadow. Elena exhaled slowly, heart hammering. Timing mattered. Precision mattered. She waited until the searchlights swung east, their beams cutting the yard in harsh white arcs, then stepped quietly into the mud, careful not to slip. Sophia lay near the wash station, pretending to collapse. "Ah," she cried, clutching her side as though fainting. A nearby guard rushed forward, distracted, shouting. Elena slipped past the guards, mud sucking at her boots. The rear of Victor's office loomed. A window, slightly ajar, beckoned. She climbed carefully, hands slick with rain, and dropped silently inside. The office smelled of wet wood and stale smoke. Victor's desk stood as a barrier, maps spread across its surface. Elena worked quickly. The transfer routes, names, and schedules. She copied each detail onto a small scrap, memorizing the order, the timing, the rotation of guards. Every pen stroke had weight. Every second mattered. A sudden creak of footsteps froze her. She spun slightly. Daniel stood in the doorway, rifle lowered, rain dripping from his coat. "You have 1 minute," he said, voice low but urgent. Breath misted in the cold air. Elena stared at him. "Why?" His eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. "Because my mother lives in a village too," he said simply. She swallowed, nodding. 1 minute was enough. She folded the papers, hiding them beneath her clothing. Daniel stepped back into shadow, giving her cover. Outside, the rain intensified. The mud splashed beneath her boots as she dropped from the window, landing silently. Sophia feigned another collapse to maintain the guard's distraction. Elena moved quickly toward the barracks, heart racing with every step. Inside, Lena peeked from a corner. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear. She had seen everything. Elena pressed a finger to her lips. "Not a word," she whispered. Lena nodded, trembling. The escape could not afford mistakes. Elena navigated the barracks silently, memorizing each bunk, each shadow, each patrol pattern. Every sound, every drip of rain, every distant shout became a rhythm she could follow. Daniel returned briefly at the main gate, glancing toward her with a nod. No words were spoken. Understanding passed in silence. Trust was selective, fragile, but it existed. Elena reached the outer fence, mud sucking at her boots. Barbed wire loomed, searchlights sweeping past. She crouched, moving along the perimeter until the shadow of a storage shed blocked the light. Each breath was careful, measured. Each movement precise. A guard barked orders nearby, but Elena remained unseen. Her mind raced through the sequences she had memorized, the patrols, the shift changes, the rotations. Everything was mapped. Everything counted. Back in the barracks, Lena shivered beneath her thin blanket. Irina adjusted her head, expression tense but silent. Sophia's eyes flickered toward the shadows outside, calculating, waiting. Elena emerged from the shadows into the small alley behind the supply sheds. Her coat clung to her, soaked and heavy. The documents were safe. Tomas's name, the transfer schedules, all were memorized, every detail a thread for the resistance. The rain continued, relentless, masking the sound of her careful footsteps. Each stride brought her closer to temporary safety, each breath a small victory against fear. She paused once, listening, calculating, remembering. Daniel's voice reached her faintly from the main gate. Go. Now. She obeyed, disappearing into the night, wet mud clinging to her boots, documents pressed against her body. Every step, every motion, every heartbeat was deliberate. But inside the barracks, Lena's wide eyes reflected uncertainty. Fear had been seen, secrets had been noticed, and betrayal, even unintentional, could be sown by panic. Elena kept moving, mind sharp, body careful, heart steady. She had survived the first test of action. The next would demand more. Patience, courage, and silence remained her greatest weapons. Night enveloped the camp fully, rain washing over barbed wire and wooden posts. Elena vanished into shadows, carrying knowledge, carrying hope, and carrying the weight of responsibility for those left behind. Victor entered the office briskly, eyes sharp. "Where were you last night?" he demanded, voice clipped. Elena remained seated, hands folded on the desk. Her expression calm, almost neutral. "I walked the yard," she said softly. "To hear the rain, nothing more." He leaned forward, fingers tapping the polished wood. "Rain does not excuse absent observation. Files are missing." "I would never intentionally misplace anything, sir," she said, voice even. "Perhaps they were moved by others." He watched her, suspicion warring with fascination. She held his gaze too long, steady, unflinching. For a moment he forgot the missing files entirely. "Tell me, Elena," he said, voice lower, almost curious. "If you wanted freedom, would you be here now?" She smiled faintly, careful and slow. "If I wanted freedom," she said, "I would not still be standing here." The second stretched. Victor's mouth twitched, almost forming a smile, before duty reasserted itself. He dismissed her with a curt nod, tension coiling in his shoulders. Outside, chaos stirred. Lena, frightened and panicked, whispered to a guard that Elena had left the barracks during the night. Soldiers shouted, running through mud-slicked paths. Elena stayed seated, calm. The papers were no longer where Victor assumed. They rested hidden behind the frame of his sister's photograph on the wall. She had chosen the one place she knew no soldier would touch carelessly. Daniel, observing from the doorway, caught sight of her subtle nod toward the frame. Understanding passed between them. He almost allowed a faint smile to break, but the rain outside demanded silence. Victor's officers barked orders through the camp. Guards searched barracks, shook trees, and rattled doors. Lena's voice trembled as soldiers questioned her further, realizing she had revealed little concrete. Inside, Elena quietly adjusted the photograph, pressing it flush against the wall. Every detail was deliberate. Every shadow calculated. Her calm deflected suspicion, turning his attention into a tool rather than a threat. "Files are vital," Victor muttered under his breath. He clenched his fist, jaw tight, then ran a hand over his face. Observation and patience had failed him once, and the woman before him now seemed untouchable. Elena's mind worked in silent rhythm. Tomas, the others, the patterns, everything could be used to their advantage if she remained patient. One misstep and failure was certain. One careful move could shift everything. Lena sat trembling, clutching her thin coat. Elena met her eyes briefly. "Stay quiet," she whispered. "Do not speak unless necessary. Do you understand?" The girl nodded, lips quivering. Fear had caused betrayal, but the threat was contained for now. Victor's attention returned to the task of searching. Orders shouted, boots splashed in puddles, the camp a chorus of confusion. Elena remained seated, small and still, as though untouched by the storm around her. Daniel observed silently, rifle slung loosely at his side. He knew she had already acted, hidden the papers, turned fear into advantage. His gaze softened slightly. Trust could exist here, carefully, quietly. Rain dripped from the roof onto the floorboards. Shadows swayed across the walls. Elena's hand brushed the hidden frame, reassurance passing through her fingers. Everything was intact. Victor finally stopped, breathing hard, eyes narrowing at the empty office surface. His obsession and duty collided. He could not believe she would risk freedom and remain, yet part of him longed to. "Check the perimeter again," he barked. Guards ran, mud splashing, shouting as searchlights cut through the fog and rain. Elena rose slowly, unhurried. Every step was precise. Every gesture calculated. Her calm face betrayed nothing, but inside, her mind raced through contingencies. Tomas, the others, the papers, everything was accounted for. She glanced at Lena once more. "Do not falter," she said quietly. "We survive because we act with control, not panic." Daniel's eyes followed her. No words were necessary. The smallest acknowledgement conveyed everything. Victor's frustration echoed through the hall. Outside, soldiers scurried, their energy wasted in confusion. Elena's strategy, patience, and quiet observation had outmaneuvered both the guards and fear itself. She returned to her seat, hands folded, calm as the storm of searchlights and shouting swept past the windows. One step further, one careful choice, and survival remained possible. The photograph concealed more than memory now. It held knowledge, power, and the seed of resistance. Character development. Elena masters psychological control under extreme pressure, using calm and subtle manipulation. Victor is divided between duty and obsessive fascination, creating tension. Lena's panic increases internal risk but fails to compromise Elena's plans. Daniel remains a quiet observer and ally. Elena's strategic acumen grows, preparing her for the coming confrontation. Smoke curled over the camp as distant gunfire rattled the walls. Elena pressed herself against the mud-streaked barack, ears ringing. Sophia grabbed her arm. "Now," she whispered, urgency sharp. "Toward the rear fence." Wire cutters, hidden beneath the floorboards, waited. Elena's fingers closed around them, cold and steady. The barricade would not hold forever. From the haze, Tomas appeared. He had been brought with other transport prisoners that afternoon, eyes wide, voice hoarse. "Elena!" he shouted. Elena ran, boots splashing through mud, rain mixing with smoke. Bullets struck the wooden walls, splinters flying. "Tomas!" she called, ducking as a shot grazed near her shoulder. Victor emerged near the office, pistol raised. Rain-slicked mud clung to his boots, face pale and rigid. "Stop!" he barked. Elena skidded to a halt, mud spattering, heart hammering. "You used me," he said, voice low, bitter, disbelief cutting through the chaos. She met his gaze, calm and unwavering. "You chose not to see," she replied. A pause stretched. Victor's finger trembled on the trigger. For one suspended heartbeat, hesitation ruled the moment. Daniel stepped forward, rifle steady, voice quiet but firm. "I choose," he said. A single shot cracked the night. Victor's pistol clattered to the ground as he fell, wounded, eyes wide with shock and rage. Daniel's hands shook, dropping the rifle, mud and blood mixing beneath it. Elena grabbed Tomas's hand, pulling him toward the rear fence. Other prisoners followed Sophia's lead, scrambling through mud, smoke, and darkness. Every heartbeat counted. Every step was survival. Flames licked the outer supply trucks, fuel igniting with a roar. Explosions shook the perimeter, forcing guards to scatter. The gate, weakened by fire, creaked and groaned, then swung open under the force of chaos. "Keep moving!" Elena shouted, voice carrying over gunfire. Tomas clutched her hand, stumbling through mud. Irina and Lena followed, Sophia guiding others through gaps in the barbed wire. Victor groaned behind them, the moral weight of his failure etched into every line of his face. He had sought control, obsession had blinded him, and now the results were irretrievable. Daniel appeared at Elena's side, breathing hard, soaked through. "Go," he urged. "I'll cover the rest." Elena nodded, eyes forward. Tomas squeezed her hand. "We'll survive," she whispered, determination sharp as broken glass. The forest stretched ahead, dark and welcoming. Shadows wrapped around trees as the group vanished into underbrush, bullets ricocheting in the mud behind them. Smoke from burning trucks curled above the trees, orange flames illuminating the fleeing figures. Elena glanced back briefly. Victor sprawled near the office steps, soldiers disoriented, fire consuming supply crates. "Faster," she urged. Tomas kept pace, heart hammering. Fear had transformed into action, panic into controlled motion. Each step was deliberate, each breath survival. Lena tripped on exposed roots, crying out. Sophia steadied her, whispering commands. "Stay quiet, stay low. Every second counts." Irina moved silently beside them, clutching a small bundle of stolen rations. Her eyes darted toward the horizon, calculating paths through forest gaps and patrols. Elena's mind catalogued every shadow, every sound, every possible patrol. The night's chaos provided cover, but vigilance remained essential. One misstep, one stray bullet, could undo everything. Daniel's voice cut softly from behind. "Keep going." Explosions continued to shake the camp. Flames roared and smoke swirled. The prisoners pushed through mud and underbrush, Tomas holding Elena's hand tightly, Sophia ensuring no one lagged. At last, the gate was behind them. Mud clung to boots, breath came hard, bodies trembling but alive. Elena felt the forest close around them, protective, a dark canopy against the chaos they had escaped. The night was far from safe, but freedom existed now in motion, in decision, in courage. Elena's choices, Daniel's defiance, Sophia's guidance, Tomas's trust, they had all converged into this fragile, vital escape. Victor faced the consequences of his obsession and moral failure. Elena faced the unknown ahead, clutching survival, family, and the quiet fire of resistance in her chest. The farmhouse smelled of smoke and damp hay. Elena sat by a broken window, holding her father's photograph, mud-streaked and torn at one corner. Tomas slept against Marta's shoulder, breath shallow, chest rising and falling in exhaustion. Sophia whispered softly as she counted names. 2 are missing, and Lena? She ran toward the west trail, Elena said quietly. We cannot guess her fate yet. Marta pressed a hand to her son's hair, murmuring, At least the rest are here. That counts for something. Daniel limped through the doorway, clothes soaked, a thin cut streaking his cheek. Elena noticed, expression neutral. You survived, she said. I did what I had to, he answered, voice low. And I cannot return. Not to uniform, not to command. Elena's eyes met his. Then you are as displaced as we are. He nodded, shifting to a corner. No one approached immediately, but no one turned him away. Silence filled the room, heavy yet alive. Outside, smoke still rose from the distant camp. The orange glow of burning supplies lingered against the forest line, a reminder of fire, fear, and choices made. Tomas stirred, whispering, Are they gone? Elena turned slowly toward the trees. Her gaze was steady, clear. No. But we are still here. The words hung in the room. Marta exhaled shakily, hugging her son closer. Sophia adjusted the small blanket around Irina, offering a comfort born of shared exhaustion. Daniel looked at Elena, expression unreadable. "You led them," he said quietly. "All of them. You kept them alive." "I survived," she corrected softly. "That is different from leading. Survival is what mattered most." Her fingers brushed the photograph. Her father's face, faded yet present, anchored her thoughts. Fear had been a constant companion, but it no longer ruled her. Marta's voice trembled. "We will need to leave before patrols return. But for now," she gestured to the small circle of survivors. "Rest if you can." Tomas yawned, curling tighter. Elena watched him, heart tight, knowing innocence had been stolen. Yet he slept, even for a moment. Sophia leaned against the wall, whispering to Lena, who shivered beside her. "The worst is past, for now." Elena exhaled, allowing herself a small, almost imperceptible relaxation. She had moved through fear, strategy, and action, and emerged still alive. Strength now mingled with sorrow, awareness with grief. Daniel finally settled near the back, eyes closing briefly. He had risked everything, crossed a line he could never uncross. Yet no one judged him. Survival had changed all definitions of morality here. The farmhouse creaked under the morning wind. Sunlight filtered through broken shutters, glinting off mud-streaked boots, damp hair, and trembling hands. Small victories felt monumental. Elena rose, gently touching Tomas's shoulder. "We will move soon," she said softly. "But for now, stay. Rest." He stirred, murmuring, then returned to sleep. Her gaze swept the room. Survivors, wounded, scared, quiet. Each carried their own burden, each breathed with careful hope. Smoke spiraled in the distance, a reminder of what had been lost, what had been burned, and what had been survived. Elena pressed the photograph to her chest. "We remain human," she whispered. The others did not answer immediately. Silence enveloped the room, heavy but filled with unspoken acknowledgement. Elena sat back against the wall, letting exhaustion settle. War had stripped them of softness, innocence, certainty. But courage, quiet courage, remained. Morning light grew stronger. Shadows retreated. Elena's voice, steady and controlled, carried quietly, "We are still here." The forest waited beyond the farmhouse. Freedom remained uncertain. Danger lingered. But for the moment, they had survived. And survival was a victory in itself. Character development. Elena completes her transformation from frightened civilian to resilient, strategic survivor. Daniel becomes a displaced moral outsider, aware of choices and consequences. Tomas and other survivors reflect innocence compromised yet sustained. The ending is bittersweet: survival without certainty, courage without comfort, humanity preserved amidst devastation.